Hi everyone. In this video, we'll be continuing to work with layer masks. We'll do something a little bit more interesting looking than just revisiting old assignments this time. In this case, we'll be using a combination of layer masks and imported brushes to create an effect that looks like something is shattering like glass, like this example here, or like it's kind of becoming liquid and splattering like paint splatter. So I'll demonstrate this one with the shattered glass look. It's actually the technique doesn't really change from one to the other, but it's cool to see that you can use that technique with different brushes and get a different outcome. So both brushes are provided. So when you do this, you will need to find an image that looks like it would be cool looking if it looked like it was kind of crumbling or falling apart or turning to liquid. And a lot of times it might look better if it looks like it's moving. So that's why I chose a car. It doesn't have to look like it's moving, but I think it might look better that way. I'm going to do the same thing that I did in the example and I'll use this one. And one of the first things you should do is actually just make a copy just duplicate the layer, because you'll need to have multiple copies of this. Well, actually, sorry about that. Correction. Don't copy yet. So first thing you're going to have to do is actually separate the object that you want to break up from the background. So you can do that using techniques you've already used in the past. Just make a selection. Select pretty carefully. You really just want to get the object that you're going to have crumbling apart. You just want the object to be the object and the background to be the background. And then what you'll do is cut that object away. Control X to cut. Create a new layer by clicking the new layer button. And then paste the object on the new layer. It should look like it's back to normal, but I mean, you can see in my layers palette, layer 1, I'll just hide from it. Layer 1 is now missing the car. Layer 2 contains the car. This is where you'll duplicate. So make sure you duplicate the layer that contains the object. You don't need to duplicate the background. So what I'm going to do now is with the background, let me just hide these for a minute. What I'll do with the background now is I need to fill this in. It doesn't need to be a perfect fill. It just needs to have something there, because at some point, like if you see in my example, there's pieces where it looks like the car is breaking apart and there's nothing there. The stuff behind it should be the same color as in this case, the road, but it should be the same color as the background. So I'm just going to, I can select easily now because it's all white. I'll select with the magic wand and then edit, fill. And I can just click content aware, and it should be able to kind of figure out what content goes there. It just uses a pretty smart algorithm to figure out what color the pixels in a particular area should be. I'm just going to click OK. And it's going to take a while because it's actually calculating what should be in every single pixel here. So it'll take a few minutes. When it's done, there's some content filled in. I'd say that looks about right. The grass doesn't quite match up. I think it'll be fine. If yours is way off, there's another strategy you can use. Like let's say I didn't want all this green to be here. You can use the clone tool. It works kind of like the eyedropper where it takes a sample, except instead of sampling just a color, it samples a whole range of pixels. So what you can do is hold Alt and sort of swipe to take a sample. So I could do something like this, and then I can paint with that sample. So, maybe I just wanted to fill in a little bit of this so it is gray instead of green. So you can do that. So once you have some color filled in the background, again, this looks terrible, but it actually doesn't matter. Very little of this is going to show through. You just don't want it to be plain white. So you can get your layers back. And what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to take one of these layers, choose the bottom layer, and make sure you're not selecting anything anymore. Remember, this is a layer that the bottom object layer actually only contains the object. It doesn't really contain the background. I'll just hide the background for a minute so you can see that. We're gonna use to do the effect where it looks like things are kind of falling off the back of it. We need to put some pixels there that look like they're the right color. So I'm gonna do filter, liquify, and you've used this before. It just lets you smear the thing around. So I'm just gonna just liquify filter a bunch of car pixels behind the car. And again, this doesn't have to be super accurate. You just need to get a whole bunch of pixels the same color as the car or whatever object you choose to use behind it, or off whatever side you're going to add the shatter or splatter effect. Because later this is what the shattered pieces will be made of. They'll be made up of these pixels. So you just have to get that stuff onto the screen. And again, it doesn't have to look great because you're actually not going to see most of this. All right, and once you're done with that, you can click OK. And so this is actually, it's currently visible, but it's not going to stay that way. So now we need to add some layer masks. For the one with all the liquify in the back of it, that one, I'm going to take that and add a layer mask and make this mostly black. So remember, black covers things up. We actually don't really want to see this layer very much. So I'm just going to get a paint bucket tool, make sure the mask is selected, make sure my color is black, and fill that in. Notice it goes away. I'm going to go to my other layer and create a layer mask there as well. This layer is going to be mostly visible. This is the actual car. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to use brushes that are shaped like shattered glass or like splattered paint to mask away pieces of the car so that it looks like the pieces of the car are falling apart or like splattering away, and mask and add some spots to the mask with all that liquify filter, that liquefied filter spot where it looks like, so that some of those show through also with that shape. So how are we going to do that? Well, we need those brushes. I uploaded some brushes here. You can get those brushes, just download them. There's the splatter brushes and there's the broken glass brushes. I'm just going to grab the broken glass brushes. Just click download. You should just be able to drag these right into Photopea. So once it downloads, click and drag, drop it into Photopea. It's going to ask you if you want to do that all the time. It doesn't really matter. This is just a browser session anyway. So now that you have that uploaded, you should be able to find it when you use your paintbrush. So first I'll start with the actual car. So this is the white mask that allows everything to show. There's some pieces that I actually want to be invisible. So I'm going to turn the mask black for those. And those will be the spots where I want it to look like the car is actually not there. I want to make parts of the car invisible. So I will get a paintbrush. I'm going to click on my brush icon here. Taking its time loading. Click on the dot icon. This shows the shape of your tool. Instead of the circle, you'll notice that there's all these extra options now because of that import. When you dragged and dropped that brush file, it added all these different brush shapes other than regular circles. And so find one that looks like a good broken glass example. You'll notice that they start off really big. I'm going to shrink mine a lot. That should be good. And then what you'll need to do, make sure the mask is selected, is just click. Don't drag. Click where you want to take away pieces of the car. So you see I'm clicking and it's kind of just falling apart a little bit in those spots. I'm not swiping. If you swipe, I'll start swiping. You'll notice it'll actually just take away huge chunks. You don't really want that. You just want little spots. So just click to create those gaps. You can also sometimes change the brush and get a slightly different look. If you change the brush a couple of times. Again, I need to shrink that a lot. If you shrink the brush, you can change up the look of the shatter or the splatter a little bit. Okay, so it looks like the car is starting to break up in the back, which is what I wanted. Now I need to switch to my other mask, and I can use the same brush, but this time I'll be changing the dark mask with my liquefied stuff behind the car. I'll be changing this dark mask so that there's patches of light, and that means parts of that liquefied stuff will show up in the shape of where I'm clicking. So you'll notice if I click, wherever I click with white, so I have to change my color to white here. Wherever I click with white, you'll see shattered pieces start to show up. I kind of want it to be thicker, closer to the car, and then break up more towards the back. You see, it starts to get too streaky because I've clicked too much. So what I can do, this is a nice thing about layer mask. Let me change up my brush. I can switch this back to black and just start taking away. That's closer to what I want. I still want a few larger pieces. Change it back to white again so that these pieces show up. And I'll just try to get a few car chunks, but not a lot. There, that's more or less what I was going for. Yeah, so now you have what looks like Now you have what looks like a car, or, in the case of another object, some object that's sort of breaking up into pieces.